Ray, a John Maxwell certified leadership coach. Welcome to Life, Love, and Leadership, where we discuss everything pertaining to life, love, and leadership. Let's get started. Hello and Happy New Year and Happy New You. I'm Tom Ray from the Real Leadership Company, and this is Life, Love, and Leadership, the podcast. Thank you for joining us today. And joining with me on the line is my co-host and friend, Ken Shelton. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Tom, and welcome everybody to this wonderful day and this wonderful broadcast. I believe you're going to enjoy it. I believe that you'll learn some things today that will help revolutionize your life. It will help you as you move forward into this year. But before we begin in earnest with our thoughts for the day, I want us to talk a little bit about our attitude of gratitude. Each broadcast, we take a moment to talk about our attitude. Attitude is so important in everything that we do. And I know that that's sort of a cliche phrase, but it's cliche because it's true. Attitude of gratitude, that we're grateful for something. Well, I'm grateful for friends. I have so many friends. I have friends that are I have a group of friends that are very faithful to me, and I am faithful to them. And we trust each other. We know each other. We may not always see each other on a regular basis. I have a friend in Tennessee and a friend in Louisiana and a friend in South Carolina, and we are as close as friends could be. Then I have friends here in Michigan. I've got Tom right across the screen from me here, who I believe is a very, very good friend, and I could tell him anything, and he would be there for me. Here's a little thought. Have you ever thought about having a friend to whom you could share all of your concerns, the good, the bad, and the ugly? And they would become what I call a fault vault, a place where you could share your needs, and they would take them in and would not share them with anyone. They would only share them with the Lord. A fault vault is like a bank vault. It's open, but it's only open for deposits and not withdrawals. And it's an important aspect to friendship. So that is my attitude of gratitude. How about you, Tom?
Well, thank you for yours. Mine is kind of similar. I'm thankful today for advice. For when friends or people close to us that we usually allow to speak into our life to give us advice. Sometimes we are caught up in our own space, in our own head, in our own thinking, and we need that other voice to give us advice, to remind us of maybe something we already know, but to help bring assurance to that. And I've been in the position to offer advice to others, and it's been fruitful. So that's mine for the day, for the attitude of gratitude.
Well, this is an important day because today we're going to pick up where we left off on our previous broadcast and the one prior to that. But before I go there, I want to ask you how you ended the last year, 2022. Was it a good year? Was it a tough year? Of course, it was not the primary COVID year that we all went through. We've come beyond it. There's still a little bit of it hanging around. But, when you turn on the news and you listen every day and you have people around you who are grumbling and complaining, and they are sort of Eeyore, and they can't ever see the good in the day. And we all have people in our lives that are like that, and they're important people, but at times they just can't seem to believe that there's a good thing happening. And it can affect you and leave you with a feeling that things are not just as they should be. And so you come into a new year feeling like you need a change, but you don't know how to affect that change. You don't know really what to do to kickstart it, or to, even if you did kickstart it, how to maintain it through the year. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about it through the concept of having a word for the year. I know that may sound like a gargantuan task to have one single word that would keep you all year long, but really it's not. It's a very simple idea and one that will be very helpful for all of us as we press on through 2023. Tom, tell us a little bit about where you came up with that concept.
Well, it actually was, the idea was birthed through John Maxwell, if I'm being honest, and I always want to be honest. And so, but was birthed with that, and just having something to focus on to kind of keep us on a path throughout the year. Sometimes we can be scatterbrained and kind of be all over the place, even if we're very creatures of habit and doing things a certain way every single day. There's something that kind of leads and guides our lives. So for last year, my word for the year was intentionality, being intentional in everything that I was doing. And so that kind of led me to that and kind of kept that front and center in my life. Ken, did you have a word for last year?
Last year was that was a new concept for me. So I started out with creativity. I was in the middle of a recording project, and I had to come up with 13 songs. And I'm a songwriter, and it just hurts me to use anybody else's music when I record. So I put myself to the test, and I did. I wrote 13 songs, but creativity was the word that really brought me through the year. And I found that it was a great way to keep me in the rails, so to speak, right on track for what I needed to be doing. And I finished that album. And by the way, if you want to listen to it, you can go to any place where you stream music and find it. It's called Ken Shelton Legacy, Songs from My Family. So Legacy is 13 songs that I wrote for my wife, my daughters, and my 10 grandchildren. And I've received a lot of positive comments about it, and I would be so thrilled if you would just check it out. Probably the easiest way to find it is to go to my website, KenSheltonMusic.com, KenShelton music.com. And there you can find the stories behind the songs, which you won't get in the streaming services. You can understand why I wrote them and a little bit about my family, and listen to the music and stream it at no cost, or you can purchase it right there on the website, either one. So KenSheltonMusic.com, Legacy, Songs for My Family. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, and a great word. And that word helped keep you on track for the project that you were doing. And a lot of us, we don't have that thing kind of guiding us, as you talked about being on the rails, having something that keeps you from squirrel. That we're typically into doing in many occasions. I don't know about you, but for me, I can be distracted by shiny objects and off I go, right? And so a word for the year kind of helps us stay focused on that and thinking into it. So with that being said, we've come across a website to help everyone in developing what your word could be for 2023. It's called thegoalchaser.com, and we'll put it in the description of this podcast. But it's ideas for a better you in 2023. We're challenged in this particular article, instead of writing a New Year's resolution, how about coming up with a new word for the year that kind of packages everything that you're going to do for the year. They call it a focus word on this website. And I think it will help all of us in discovering what a word is, what word resonates with our spirit or with our life, and something that we can say, you know what, I want to have this be the word that kind of helps me focus on this part of my life for the rest of 2023. Can you reveal some of those words?
First, let me say this.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like they have a debt of honor to pay to the concept of a New Year's resolution. They feel like, no, I have to do that. I have to have a resolution. Maybe it's because your parents did, or maybe it's because you read it somewhere in a book when you were at a formative stage in your development. But the problem with a resolution is it's a one and done concept. It's usually one thing that you resolve to do, because they say we can hold 7 things in our short-term memory, but we can't commit to 7 things in a year. That's too much. So we take one thing. This year, I want to lose 40 pounds. And then we center all of our focus on losing 40 pounds. Well, that is a worthy idea if you need to do that. But when you make that your primary resolution for the year, you can become obsessed with it. Underneath that idea of a resolution are words that hold the resolution up and in place. And that's what we're talking about today. Finding a word or finding words that support the idea of resolve. And so there are many such words that do that. Here's some word of the year ideas. One that I found very interesting is absolve. To absolve means to erase or to remove. So let's say you're a Catholic person or a person of the Catholic faith, and you go to church and you go into confession with your priest and you confess your sins, and he absolves you of your sins. It's a lot like resolve, but he closes it, he ends it. He says, let's not carry this forward anymore. And it's an important spiritual concept, but it's also important in our day-to-day lives, because, you know, you can carry the bag of your past failures and successes around with you until they weigh you down. And when you talk with people, you can reach in that bag and pull out a failure and hold it up and say, boy, I blew it over here. And well, but I succeeded over here. Or you can just set that bag down. You can walk on. I was at a funeral recently, and at the end of the funeral, I stepped out into the foyer, and a lady and a gentleman walked up to me. I didn't recognize them. Something in my memory wanted to recognize them, but I didn't know who they were. And she came up, she said, do you remember me? And I always hate it when people say that, because I know I have to say no or lie, or I have to remember them, and I don't want to lie. So I said, you know, ma'am, I want to say yes because you look somewhat familiar, but I can't remember when or where. She said, it was in Cass City, and you were speaking at a church service. And while you were speaking, you just stopped and looked at me, and you said, ma'am, you've carried that bag long enough. Why don't you just set it down and walk away? And she said, that was 20 years ago, and I have been free for 20 years. It was just you telling me I could do that. And so sometimes we just need permission to let go of the things that have been wearing on us. So absolve is a good word for that, because we can just say, it's done, it's over with, I don't owe it anything. There are a few more on there. Here's another one I like, and this one is one that takes just a little bit of thought. It's the word charisma. We all have a certain charisma. You may not consider yourself to be a charismatic person, and by that I mean a gifted person. Charisma comes from a Greek idea that just simply means giftedness. A person who's happy and, well, Tom's that person with charisma. I like to think that I'm a person with charisma, and it's generally referred to as a positive trait. And so maybe you're the kind of person that has been sort of bland in your general personality. Well, we're not here trying to change your personality, but we are here to try to help you move forward in your life. And sometimes what we need to add is a little charisma. How about you, Tom? You see a few more in there that might stand out to you?
Yes. I mean, there's so many here. Was there 100 or more?
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but there's one called encourage. And so imagine if that was your word for the year, being encouragement. How can I encourage someone for the year? And having a word such as that causes us to be focused on that and to run after that. And so there's others here. There's clear. Clear is a word that just is clear. It pops out to me. This word here, it may talk about being the way we communicate. So the way we communicate, we want to be clear with people. I often share this story with people. It's about Johnny, who's playing in the street, and mom says, "Johnny, get out of the street." And Johnny runs into the house. And the next day, Johnny's playing in the street, and mommy says, "Johnny, get out of the street." And Johnny runs into the house. The next day, Johnny's playing in the street, and mommy says, "Johnny, get out of the street." And Johnny says to mommy, "Mommy, what's the street?" And so sometimes people don't know what we're talking about. Another concept when I'm helping people find clarity is I ask them, "Hey, do you want to go out for ice cream?" And they would say, "Yes, but what kind of ice cream? Is it soft serve? Is it hand dipped? Is it in a bowl? Is it in a waffle cone or a sugar cone? What do you see in your mind when I say ice cream?" And so if we're not both on the same page, it can lead to confusion. And so having a word being clear for the year is maybe something that we can help bring focus and clarity to a discussion. But Ken, there are a bunch of words here that people can access and look at and see which one resonates with them. But let's talk about your word and my word for the year. What's your word for 2023?
Well, I've been studying for a few weeks the biblical book of 1 Samuel. And it is primarily about the early days of the life of Samuel. Samuel is a central figure in the Old Testament. I'm a New Testament Christian, but I think the Old Testament is really important. And of course, our Judeo-Christian values are heavily influenced by Old Testament concepts and ideas. Samuel is important because he was a person who had to be the custodian of change. I think that's an intriguing concept. Samuel was born to a woman and a man. The woman's name was Hannah, and her husband's name was Elkanah, a name you don't hear much today. But Hannah and Elkanah could not have any children. Elkanah had another wife named Peninnah, and Peninnah did have children. And every year, as was the Jewish tradition, their family had to make their way to Shiloh, which was the place where the tabernacle of worship was settled for the people of Israel at that time. It was a tent. And so they made their way, and it was about 90 miles, if my memory is correct. So it would take them, if they had their beasts of burden, and Peninnah had about 10 children, I believe. And then you had Elkanah and Hannah, and you had their animals, and you had their servants, and all the things that they would need, because they would have to stay at least one night. It was an arduous journey. And so they made it there, and all the way there, year after year, and all the way back, every single year, Peninnah made fun of Hannah because she didn't have any children. The Bible says she mocked her, she criticized her, she talked down to her, and she'd had enough. And this particular year, when she made her way to Shiloh, she was so discouraged, she just broke into tears. And she couldn't eat. It was a situation where a sacrifice was made to God, and then they shared a communal meal and ate together with the priest. And she couldn't eat. She was just so burdened by it. And Elkanah, trying to be a good husband, but really a guy who was tone deaf, went to Hannah and said, "Well, why do you need a son, Hannah? You've got me. I'm better than 10 sons." It's kind of like buying your wife a mixer for her birthday. She probably needs a mixer. It's probably a beautiful mixer, but she was looking forward to perfume and a night out with a meal. And, she was looking for something more romantic. So she just shut him out and went into the tent and began to pray. And the high priest, also tone deaf, saw her praying, using her lips and muttering, but not making any sound. And he accused her of being drunk. And she said, "I'm not drunk. I don't even drink wine. I'm here because I'm brokenhearted and I need a son. And he said, may it be so. May you have the child. And she had made a promise that she would give her child to the Lord. And so after it happened, a year later, she was raising a child, and she did raise him for a few years, and then took him back to Shiloh and dedicated him to the Lord and gave that child to the high priest to work in the tabernacle of the Lord there in the wilderness. Samuel is important because he grew up around religious things. But the man who was supposed to be his mentor, Eli, was not a very attentive person. He had sons that ran renegade. They sexually molested women who worked in the tabernacle of the Lord. When sacrifices were brought, they would take the best of the meat for themselves and disregard other people. And Eli knew about it, but didn't do anything about it. Eli became what's called a judge. So I'm going to spare you a lesson in Old Testament history, but I will say that Eli was the last of the judges of Israel. There's a whole line of judges, individuals that God used to lead and exert judgment on the people of Israel. Not judgment in the sense of negative judgment, but helping people know the right thing to do. You have men like Samson, who was a judge of Israel, and others. Samuel was the last one, but he was also the first of a new line of men in the Old Testament, the prophets. He was the first of the prophets. But not only that, he was the first individual to inaugurate or usher in kings for Israel. Israel had never had a king before. God was their king. So Samuel had to observe and be the custodian of the change from the era of judges to the era of prophets and kings. And those were very difficult changes to steward. And yet Samuel was faithful through every one of those changes. He served the Lord. The Bible says not one word of his mouth fell to the ground. It's an odd phrase, but what it means is that if Samuel said it, it was true. And if he said it as a prophecy, it came to pass. And we've read that was the case. I have used Samuel over the last few weeks as an archetype, I suppose. An archetype is an image that we have in our minds of someone that we want to be like. Samuel was a wonderful, tender-hearted man, but he was faithful. He stood by his calling. He did what he knew he was supposed to do. And he knew that God was with him because of his faithfulness. So I hope you enjoyed that Old Testament lesson, but I hope you also enjoyed where faithfulness can be applied into your life through seasons of change. That's why faithfulness matters. Change is bound to happen. And if change happens, you have to remain steady in your purpose in life. That's why you need to have a word that you can hold on to that guides you and keeps you so that you just don't flit from idea to idea and task to task, but you stay on track. So there I go. That's my word. How about yours, Tom?
My word is joy, joy for the year. Now, I would consider myself a great, joyful person. It takes a lot to get me down. I'm very positive thinking and want to see the best for people, and even in my own life. And so joy is not something for me per se, but me helping others find joy, me being a conduit. And that's another word that I would like to attach to this one, is being a conduit to bring joy to other people. And so I have to look at different ways by which I can spread this joy to other people, through a smile, through holding a door open for someone, sending them a letter of thanks, just sharing life and the expectancy of life and the fullness of life with another person. Now, some people who are Eeyore, as Ken suggested just a little while ago, may not want to hear that kind of thing. But I'm still going to bring it. It's kind of like some people may not like the sunshine, but the sunshine is going to come up every single day. And so I want to be that sunshine, if you will, that joy to help others. Now, there's an acronym that actually comes with joy. My wife has shared this with me several times in the past, but it's Jesus, others, and you. JOY, Jesus, others, and you. And having that perspective will really help guide my life over the next 12 months. And so at the top of this podcast, I said, Happy New Year and Happy New You. How can we use a word that will help get us on the right track? Now, Ken talked earlier about someone having a New Year's resolution about losing 40 pounds or whatever it is. But what happens when that's done? Let's say you get that completed in month 3. What happens the rest of the year? You have no vision and no guide of where to go next. So having a word, like instead of losing 40 pounds, you could say getting healthy. Well, now that you've done that part of the weight part, well, what other area do you need to make healthy in your life? And so having that kind of concept in your thought process to help guide you through the year will really bring greater results and benefits if you do that. So that's my word for the year, joy. And we both encourage you to discover a word. It can be from the list that we're providing and putting in the description of this podcast. But you can also go on an adventure of your own and to discover a word, but do it sooner rather than later. And something that you can really stick your stakes into and say, this is a word I'm going to use for the year, rather than being scatterbrained and doing a different word for every day, because there's no focus there. Ken, you got anything else to add to that?
I found years ago that the idea of journaling was extremely important. Journaling is a task that can be one of the most beneficial things in the life of a person who's trying to accomplish things that matter. You know, some people are happy to go to work every day and do the same thing over and over again, and their primary goal in life is to retire and then go to Florida in the winter and come home to Michigan in the summer. And while, you know, that sounds lovely and wonderful, that's an outdated idea. It doesn't really accomplish anything. One of my mentors encouraged me years ago to journal. I'll never forget when I was first made aware of the concept of journaling. It was in 1971, and I was a freshman at Lee College, now Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee. And I had an English professor who made as a requirement for the completion of her course that all of her students would maintain a journal. Well, I had never heard of a journal. It was 1971. I was 18 years old. I was a guy. I played football and baseball and liked to run around and be goofy and, you know, do all the, I worked on an apple orchard. I was an outdoors guy. Journal? What in the heck's a journal? I went to her and I said, Professor, I'm not sure I really get the handle on what a journal is. Now, that sounds crazy today because I journal, and most of you do, and it's an accepted practice. And she tried to explain it to me. She said, well, it's a little notebook where you just write things down. I said, what kind of things? Well, anything comes to your mind. I said, I don't think you want me to do that. She said, well, what I'm trying to say is that you have goals and ideas and concepts that are important to you, feelings that you have, maybe a poem that comes to mind. All of a sudden, I was in the game because I loved music and I liked to toy with writing music. And so I began to write poetic ideas. I also found that if you write nice poems, you get the girls. So anyway, I started keeping a journal, but I found it very frustrating, partly because I was not at the maturity point in my life to bring together the ideas of my interior life and my day-to-day exterior life. And so I struggled with the concept. Later on, however, when I, in earnest, began writing music, I found that keeping a journal was very important, because if you don't keep a journal, you've got scraps of paper all over the house with your ideas and concepts. And when you need one, you can't find it. You read of musicians who, write on the back of menus or, receipts or whatever. We've all done that, if you're a creative person. But a journal, as you know, is really just a notebook. It can be a spiral-bound notebook. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to go for the $25 journal that has nice cursive writing on the top that says, write your idea for the month. You could do that, or you could just get a spiral-bound notebook. Or, you could just get some 3-ring binder paper and stick it in a 3-ring binder. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a place where you can go every day and write in the morning or in the evening at a specific time, not say like at 8 o'clock, but first thing in the morning or the last thing when the day is over. And you write your ideas, you write your thoughts, and you write your feelings. And the reason I bring up journaling is because you may not be able to get your hands around one particular word for the year. In fact, right now, as we've been talking, you may have already thought of 3 words. Well, take your journal and write those 3 words down, and then underneath those 3 words, make a list of why it's important to you. Why is faithfulness important to me? Why is another word or another word or another word? And then finally come to one that resonates with you, or you may find 2 concepts. It won't take very long before you hit a home run and you land on a word that really speaks to your soul. And you will understand and know that you need to really invest yourself in that concept, and you'll be a better person for it. I guarantee it. You'll be a better person for it. The people in your life will appreciate the fact that you followed through with this task, and you'll be able to mentor other people in their goals in life. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit.
That's good. And in the article on the website there, he talks about trying to hone in on that word, as you were talking about, Ken. And he talks about maybe it's something that you want to improve on in your life, or a word that's the opposite of the direction you've been heading. So, for instance, we talked about maybe you're in an unhealthy place, so that your word could be healthy for the year. And that can be the thing that's opposite of unhealthy is healthy. The opposite of joy is sadness. And the opposite of faithful is unfaithful. So being faithful in what you do. So coming up with something like that would be very helpful. But even maybe there's something you want less of in your life. Maybe you've been consuming a lot of media. There's a lot of people that have taken sabbatical, if you will, from social media. So whatever that thing is, let that word help guide you through the year. And this was just a great place to help you discover what that word could be for the year. And we'd like to hear from you. What is your word for the year? We'd like to know. We'd like to celebrate with you on whatever that word is. And even as you go through the year, if you'd like to check in with us and say, hey, this is how my word's going, or this is what I discovered about myself or about others through this year because of this word, we'd like to hear from you. So contact me at tom@realleadershipcompany.com. tom@realleadershipcompany.com. And I'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you. And perhaps if you're interested and you want to give us permission, we'd like to share your information with others and share how this podcast has impacted your life over the course of the year.
We're so glad that you take time every week to listen to these podcasts. These podcasts, we believe, are very important to the development of your leadership, your role in life. Whether you know it or not, you influence people. And your influence is what makes you a leader. In fact, leadership is influence that inspires people. That's not an original concept. That came from Charles Swindoll. He broke down the concept of leadership, and he came up with the idea that leadership really is influence. And there are positive influences and negative influences, and leadership is influence that inspires people and hopefully inspires people to ascend in life and to accomplish things. I'd like to wrap it up, if I could, Tom, with a Bible verse that to me has been really, I suppose, a life verse. It's Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13. Paul, the apostle, said, "I have not yet achieved all the things that I want to do." This is my paraphrase. "I have not yet accomplished a life that has all the virtues that I want to have. But I do this one thing. I forget those things which are behind, and I press toward the upward call in Christ Jesus." I love those words. I like the way that rings. You know, the King James says it a little differently. This is from the New Living Translation. So press toward the upward call, moving in an upward direction and ascending in life. And so we really can forget the things that are behind. You can do that. You owe it nothing. All of those accomplishments, all of those failures, all of those mediocre days, they're back there somewhere. Just let them be. Stop rehearsing them when you're in the shower in the morning. Have you ever noticed that the shower is a place that you talk to yourself? Because it's a right brain activity. And so, you're doing this. Well, I got to do this stuff today. And, oh man, that guy drives me crazy. And he reminds me of. And in about 40 seconds, you're on repeat about a guy that drove you crazy 30 years ago. And you can't get out of that loop. That is playing. So that every morning that you're in the shower, you keep thinking about that horrible person. And that essentially is what spins your life around. And you just know that one day you're going to achieve something great and then call that person up and say, "Look at me now." What a horrible way to live. What a lousy way to live, trying to prove to other people who could care less about you that you really have done something that matters. You need to hold your own center of gravity. You need to believe in yourself. And I want to encourage you, and I know Tom does too, to hang in there and to keep on trusting that you have good instincts.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Hopefully this has been encouraging to you, and we encourage you to take advantage of this information. And this stuff is wisdom. And speaking of that, we're doing the Proverbs challenge, actually. So it's getting into the book of Proverbs in the Bible. I don't care who you are, a person of faith or not, there is wisdom packed into these 31 chapters that will help you and help you guide your life and steer you away from the things that you shouldn't be doing and the things that you should be doing, and how to invest your money and your time and your resources. Very important stuff. So it's the Proverbs challenge. It's one chapter a day for the 31 days. Now, as of this recording, we're just a few days into this, but I challenge you to jump on board. If you go to our Facebook page at realleadershipcompany.com, or even my Facebook page personally, you can search out that Proverbs Challenge post and click on that and actually join in with us. We'll put it in the description of this podcast and do this challenge with us. Also, I want to tell you about the Leadership Company. We're here to provide leadership development, coaching, and training. We can come in and do speaking and or do team building, or help change the culture in your business. I was just fortunate with my wife to go to a hotel, and I got to experience a 5-star team working together with a servant leadership mindset. And it just so inspired me and impacted me. And that's something I'd like to see happening at every business, in church, in community that we come across. But it takes work, and it takes being intentional to make that happen. And so I think we're going to be doing a podcast on that in the near future. If you have any questions or comments on that, you can reach me at tom@realleadershipcompany.com, or you can head over to our website at realleadershipcompany.com just to discover some of the things that we do. And then I'm also a realtor. If you're looking for a house or to buy or sell, contact me at TomReaRealtor@gmail.com, TomReaRealtor@gmail.com, or give me a call at 586-275-7732. I'd be happy to chat with you and walk with you through that journey. And then lastly, Ken, you just shared at the top of the hour how people can get in touch with you or in touch with your music. Why don't you share that with them one more time before we wrap up?
Sure. It's KenSheltonMusic.com. Pretty simple. You'll love the music. I guarantee it. It was the task that I have enjoyed more than any other recording project in my life. And this is my 8th recording project. I am so thrilled with the way it turned out. My producer, Gail Brannon Jr., orchestrations by one of the conductors at the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. I sing a duet with one of the 2 background singers for Katy Perry, one of Detroit's finest jazz pianists. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience working with those fine musicians right here in the Detroit area. And I hope that you'll enjoy it. About 5 different styles of music, from sort of a pop Motown feel to jazz, kind of a Michael Bublé thing, baby. And I sing love songs to my family. I have, at the time that I recorded, which last year, I had a 1-year-old all the way up to a 21-year-old. The 1-year-old is still 1, but she'll be 2 here in just a few days. So, I'm trying to keep that honest. But man, I looked at that baby girl when I first saw her, and one word came to my mind: smitten. I was smitten. And I wrote in my journal, I am smitten, absolutely smitten. That became the first line of the song. Smitten, absolutely smitten. The love bug has bitten me all over once again. I won't sing for you now. Just go there, KenSheltonMusic.com. I believe you'll enjoy it. And if you do, give me some feedback. There's a contact form there. Just reach out to me and let me know what your thoughts are.
Well, we hope you've been encouraged by this podcast, and please do us a favor and subscribe to this podcast, comment on it, good or bad, and like it and share it with others. And we encourage you to discover your word for the year. Discover it, and then let us know about it. Again, Tom@realleadershipcompany.com. Well, that does it for today. Thank you for joining us today on Life, Love, and Leadership.